On this point where you said you don't think Trump would want to be the president that presided over Iran releasing a nuclear weapon, is that because if he pulled out now, they would enrich the uranium and then maybe demonstrate it under his
That's right.
presidency?
So the scenario that I have laid out, I've laid this out to my classes for years, the idea of what Iran would do with nuclear weapons. A lot of people have an image, and it's coming from the public, so I understand why they have it. A lot of people have said this image, where Iran gets a nuclear weapon or two, and what they do immediately is they blow up Tel Aviv with the first one and maybe New York with the second one. This is just highly unlikely, because what would happen is we would retaliate with nuclear weapons under that here. Much more plausible. And everything I'm seeing from Iran has been completely supporting the idea that they're thinking this through strategically, is you would want not to just have one working nuclear weapon or even two, you want 5. Ideally, you want 10. Maybe even 15. This is what happened with North Korea. Because once you have, let's even say 5, the most rational thing to do is you detonate the first one as a detonated test. You test it on your own territory, and then you listen for a week while everybody says, well, they only had one, they were stupid, they don't have and you detonate the second one. And once you detonate the second one, just like when we hit Nagasaki after Hiroshima, everybody will assume there's a lot more there. And that is how you actually deter the United States from attacking you. And by the way, that's what effectively North Korea did. When President Trump took office in 2016, North Korea was a major problem. We were talking about bombing North Korea and so forth. And there's multiple reasons, but the big issues are that North Korea has a lot of nuclear weapons. We're not going to be able to get them all. They have some other things they can do too, like artillery on Seoul. But this isn't just North Korea and Trump decided to be, sort of best buds here.
So the other route that played out in my mind was that Trump would just keep bombing Iran to keep them weak. But again, that doesn't solve the Strait of Hormuz problem.
Doesn't solve the uranium problem and doesn't solve the Strait of Hormuz problem, because if we knew where that material was and we could just bomb it out of existence, I'm talking about the enriched uranium material, we would have done this already.
Which leads all roads to really the only solution being some kind of deal.
Absolutely. That's why the best thing to do is a deal with the military containment of Israel. That's the deal.
The problem you have with such a deal, when you're going into that deal, is the enemy know that you don't really have a plan B. You don't have a good plan B.
That's right.
And so your negotiation position is very weak.
That's why they're going to keep their 3.5% enriched uranium no matter what. The problem we face here is if we were ever going to get the 3.5% enriched uranium to go away, we should never have ripped up the Obama nuclear deal by Trump in 2018. They've been developing ever since. The Biden administration, Trump one couldn't figure out how to stop the enriched uranium by Iran. Biden couldn't figure out how to stop it. Trump now has been trying to figure out how to stop it. And you know what? It's not stoppable. It's not stoppable short of these options I'm laying out. There's no way to get that material without ground forces, Stephen. And you're not going to send those ground forces in, just 1,000 guys to be at some postage stamp of an area for a month or two, trying to find that enriched uranium. This is just not realistic. I think it's going to be a bigger option.
I think it's clear to me, I do this podcast and ask these questions and I have people on because I'm actually really trying to find answers for myself. And I think if I've arrived at any conclusion from everything I've learned over the last couple of weeks, it's that I think Trump made a really big mistake. And that mistake probably started when he ripped up Obama's deal.
That's right.
But it's clear that
Fordo was the really, really big one.
I think he's stuck.
He is stuck.
I think he's stuck. And I think he's facing several bad options going forward. So I really have no idea what's going to happen. And
what you will also watch, Stephen, so back to politics here, is Trump right now, it's not just Pape anymore who's saying he's lost control, he's losing power. The world is saying that. And this is going to start to become the Republican Party is going to say that. And what this is going to do is it's going to incentivize Trump even more, probably to become more belligerent, not to become calmer. So as Trump is becoming the lamest of lame ducks going forward, because it's evident he's losing power. And as he loses power here on the international scene, this will mean he will lose power domestically as well. And we'll never go to zero, but it will be a slow decline. This is where the real sort of future is here, why this is not simply a steady state now. This is why I won't make a prediction of what's going to happen in September. We are not at a steady state. It is an unstable balance here between 3 and 4. What do
you think happens with Europe? I feel like Europe aren't on either side of your scale here. You've got Iran, Russia, and China on one end of the scale. You've got the US on the other. Europe and NATO. What happens? Are they going to form their own alliance?
NATO is, for all practical purposes, dead. We're just writing its obituary. It's a body in the morgue already. Most people don't think that NATO is a political alliance. NATO is much more than that. If there's an Article 5, what that means, Stephen, is there's a military operation with an American general at the top. And with Article 5, the American general tells the other countries' militaries, including their nuclear weapons, what to do. Now, if you're Britain and you have nuclear weapons, or even if besides the nuclear weapons, if you're Germany and you don't have them, are you going to follow General Kane's orders on anything at this point? I don't think so.
So Article 5 is the document that all the NATO countries have signed?
No, it's the part of the NATO treaty which says if there's a NATO operations like in Afghanistan, it's American general who orders all the other countries' militaries what to. It's a hierarchy. So it's not a collection where the countries get together and they have these big cooperative decisions. No, the Americans run the plan. They are the ones who organize the military operation. They run the plan, and they just assign the other countries' roles the way they would the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force inside of the Pentagon. What I'm saying is what you just saw with Iran is such a horrible, catastrophic failure within just weeks. The idea that any Europeans are going to follow the orders of an American general, and I don't even think this is going to be just under Donald Trump. I mean, I think for years, I think this is just laughable.
Trump was quite angry and scathing with his words about NATO. He said it's a paper tiger and referred to them as cowards. And as we've been sat here today, you might be aware that NATO were meeting with Trump today in Washington, D.C. And the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said when it came time to provide the logistical and other support to the United States needed in Iran, some allies were a bit slow, to say the least. In fairness, they were a bit surprised. To maintain the element of surprise for the initial strikes, President Trump opted not to inform us ahead of time. But what I see when I look across Europe today is allies providing a massive amount of support. Nearly without exception, allies are doing everything the United States is asking. They have heard and are responding to President Trump's request. So it sounds a little bit like an apology tour coming from NATO. And the German Chancellor has also made a comment saying that they do not want to split NATO. And
well, they don't want American troops to leave the European continent because that provides some deterrent to Russia. That's what you're hearing there. But NATO was always had an anchor. Remember we talked about anchors? The anchor in NATO was America's protection of European security. What you're seeing when President Trump creates a problem, a catastrophe for the world, and says he won't send American forces into the Strait of Hormuz, but he wants the Europeans to send their forces into the Strait of Hormuz. This is the opposite of protection. He's making NATO countries or European countries vulnerable, and they're reacting to that by saying, we won't do it.
According to diplomats, NATO secretary briefed member capitals today that Trump is demanding concrete commitments within the next few days from NATO to help to secure the Strait of Hormuz.
which would only make sense if you were doing phase 3, the ground operation. So you cannot secure the Strait of Hormuz only with air power. If we could, we already would. You can't secure it only with naval power. If you could, we already would. We have a much bigger Navy, much bigger air forces than any of those countries individually or even combined. The only reason you would really want those forces from NATO is because you're planning on a bigger ground operation, and that's what you're seeing right there. And I don't think Europeans, let's not even talk about the word NATO, I don't think the Europeans are likely to do it, because you're seeing if they're ever going to do it, Stephen, they would want Trump out of office. The number one thing that I don't think is going to happen here is anybody's going to bail out Trump.
It's political suicide, really, for a lot of the European leaders.
It's political suicide for the Democrats to bail out Trump in our country. It's going to start to become political suicide for even Republicans to bail out Trump. That's what you're going to start to see in the fall. And it's going to be political suicide for the Japanese, for the Indians. This is the problem. Trump caused the problem. He's, as I said on your show last time, he's going to become LBJ if he doesn't take a deal soon. Well, that was 40 days ago, Stephen, and he still hasn't taken the deal. Not really. And he's becoming LBJ. Nobody's going to want to be associated with him.
Here in the UK, we have Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister. And it appears to me that since he's come out and started saying that he won't support Trump's war, we won't send troops to the Middle East, it appears that that's actually driven up his favorability amongst certain people. And it makes me think that actually, as we say, it's political suicide for European leaders to send troops there, because they will lose the next election in their country.
I think you put it excellent, Stephen. I really can't improve on that. Let me just say that a year ago, with the tariffs, I started to do a study of tracking how European support for America was starting to go into the tank. And that was with tariffs. Now, what Trump has done is he's driven up the price of oil. He's hurting their economies in a serious way. And as that actual damage occurs, and it's still in the pipeline, it hasn't hit as strong as it likely will in the next month, you are likely going to see that the publics in Europe are going to become anti-American. And it's not just going to be can't support Trump anymore. Coming here, I had to pay the visa, the ETA, and it took forever. And what's happening here? We're getting some payback here on Americans. I think this next time I come to London, I'm not going to be surprised that the price of that visa is doubling or tripling.
What is your closing high-level remark about all this stuff? And I guess I really want to focus it on the average person who is going about their life as a normal civilian in any of these countries that are affected. What is the high-level point of view here that we need to close upon?
The high-level point of view is we're about to start think seriously about the election. And what we need to do is not just choose, but bounce back and forth between Republican and Democrat. And actually, Britain is a case study of what can happen if you bounce back and forth here. We need to start to really support strong, stable policies that will empower the middle. The problem that we face, Stephen, is we're moving back and forth from really ideas here that 1 year we really don't like what Biden's doing, and now we have the radical wing on the other side, and we certainly don't like that. Well, if we keep going back and forth here between two extreme alternatives, we'll just get different versions of bad outcomes. And it's not making things better. It's a cycle that's making it worse.
What's the solution?
The solution is the public needs to hear that every election, every choice, we have an opportunity here to focus on the more centrist candidates. And this is something that we really can make decisions about. And it's just simply the case that if we don't do that, what you're going to get is you're going to get back and forth bouncing around. And I don't think a third party here, these ideas are really very meaningful. This really comes down to talking to the public. And it's one of the big reasons, Stephen, I'm going to the podcast world. Because remember, I've advised every White House and so forth and so on. We've got to get beyond that. We've got to actually talk to real people And this is what you do. And increasingly, I'm doing it. And I really believe that the podcast network is an opportunity to do that. But it doesn't mean that it forces people to vote Democrat or Republican. We've got to understand that we can't just keep thinking about, okay, now we're really mad at Donald Trump and we're going to get the independents and now they're going to vote with the Democrats, if all we do is end up getting another extreme on the other side. Because what you're going to do is you're going to keep pissing off the middle and they're going to keep bouncing back and forth. And round after round, we've been doing that now for years in the United States. And what does it look like? It keeps getting worse.
So
it keeps getting worse.
What are you suggesting the solution is? Vote for the centrist candidate?
All the way through.
Okay.
Yes. It's a very simple thing, but it's not going to happen unless we talk about this, because it does mean that sometimes the centrist candidate is the person, the woman on the other side. And if we're not willing to do that, then we're really condemning ourselves to this cycle. I'm going to explain more about it. It's a version of the escalation trap gone domestic. It's called the legitimacy shock cycle. And I'll be talking more about this in September. So the trap I'm talking about here with violence in politics isn't just international, and you end up with traps here domestically as well.
And I'd like to close with a few thoughts for the people in Iran. I think ever since I've put myself mentally in a situation where there was a world leader saying that they were going to annihilate my civilization, and there was bombs going off. We're currently filming this in our London studio, but if there was bombs going off around the studio and there was a threat that someone was going to annihilate civilization, it's quite unthinkable for me how I would be functioning. And
yes,
it immediately, I think, shines a light on the mental health and psychology of the people in Iran right now and how they must be feeling. So I think that's probably an important message to share, because we can sometimes get a little bit caught up in hypotheticals of war and strategy and all these kinds of things. But at the end of the day, there's 19+ million people in Iran that are right in the middle of this. And we're sat in this very warm, cushy London studio. So
there's a bond that is occurring between the middle 60% of the American public and the 92 million in Iran.
Yeah.
They don't like the radicalism and on either side. And what you are vocalizing, Stephen, is the frustration that our politics has been locked up by the extremes. And I suspect the 92 million in Iran are feeling almost exactly the same thing. Their choices now are being locked into extremes. And that is that bond here that you're trying to vocalize. I believe it's valuable to vocalize it, because this is what it means to empower the people. And this is what it means to be a democracy, which is that we actually talk about not just the other side is bad and we're always good, is we talk about where the future really should go. And the idea that we're even imagining the possibility of a $40 trillion in debt country getting rocked by Iran and Russia here, who have their own reasons for wanting to hurt us. We may not fully realize that, but we really hurt Russia in the 90s here with our ideas of shock therapy. And we made out like bandits, by the way. So we really do have some real growing bonds at the social level.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.